Okay, so I think we're going to get started now. We're going to be transmitting this in YouTube, so yeah, everyone can see it after. So, okay, welcome everyone to one of our monthly webinar series. This month is, I know it's a little bit late, but we are going to be talking about Pride Edition. So, as artificial intelligence become more deeply important into fabric in our daily life, it is crucial that technologies we build reflect the diversity and richness of our work around us. Representation and inclusion aren't just about fairness, they are about ensuring that systems we create serve to everyone and that innovation is driven by a wide range of voices and experiences. So this month, in honor to Pride, which actually happened last month, but we didn't want to miss the chance to talk about it, we are focusing on the intersection between AI and the LGBTQ community representation. And we are joining a panel of very inspiring individuals who are advancing in the field of AI. So I'm very excited to be talking today about a very diverse group of panelists. So joining us today is Maria Pacheco, Diana Galvan, and Victoria Maya. So yeah, we're really excited to be here. This is a really diverse panel. We have experts in NLP, researchers, and also we have some practitioners in Mexico from credit risk and also now in e-commerce. So we are really happy to have them here from Mexico and Venezuela specifically. So to begin with, I would like to let you introduce yourself and share a little bit your journey about AI. Maybe we can start with you, Maria.
Sure, thank you so much. So hi, everyone. My name is Maria Pacheco. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Computer Science in the University of Colorado Boulder. I was born and raised in Caracas, Venezuela, and I came to the US 10 years ago now to pursue graduate school. I did my PhD at Purdue University in Indiana. After that, I spent some time at Microsoft Research, working at the intersection of machine learning and computational social science, always with a natural language processing lens. And then 2 years ago, I joined the faculty here in computer science. My lab works on natural language processing and computational social science. We span, areas of, applied socially relevant problems and how studying language at scale can help us answer social scientific questions. And we develop a lot of methods to be able to make that possible. I'm really happy to be here and, share my expertise in whatever way is helpful. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Is there a project or, a research that you're really proud of working on or, yeah, that you are really enjoying?
Yes, I mean, I guess I'll take the advantage to highlight some of my students' work, but so now ACL's coming up. I have two students that are going to be presenting some of their work there. The first one is on cross-lingual explanation of idioms. This student is really interested in developing language education applications, and one of his areas of interest is how to explain non-standard figurative language when someone is trying to acquire a language. This seems to be one of the hardest things to learn. So he was exploring the limits of language models to be able to do this in a fully cross-lingual setting. So if you encounter an idiom in English, like, I don't know, how to say, round up, right? Which might not necessarily be explained by some of the parts. Can you explain that directly to a learner, say in the Spanish language, German, you name it? And we developed a large data set for this. We also, did extensive experiments showing how translation is not enough, and we need other types of approaches to do it. He'll be in Vienna presenting this work in a few weeks. So we're really excited to have that there.
Oh, that sounds really cool. Congratulations for you and to your lab. And I know that Diana, you also work with NLP, so I would love to hear about yourself and what's a project that you're interested, and of course, how it's your journey in AI as well.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much. Well, my name is Diana Galvan. I was born and raised in Mexico City, but I left Mexico almost oh, I guess exactly 10 years ago. So I do have a background in computer science. My bachelor's is in computer science. But then, well, at the time, I was not focused at all in AI. So then, when I decided to get into that world, and then specifically in NLP, I decided to move to Japan to do my graduate studies. So I did my master's, my PhD, and my first postdoc in Japan. And now I'm here in the UK, in the University of Cambridge. I am a research associate. And here in Cambridge, my work is focused on educational applications of NLP. During my PhD, I was mostly focused on things related to reasoning, like knowledge extraction, information extraction, and yeah, like everything, like the topic of reasoning is something that I like very much. Like cognitive science is something like I really enjoy. And so specifically here in Cambridge, so I'm focused, my work is focused on language acquisition. So people like learners, like learning English, because like this is like about Cambridge, like it's part of like it has like one of the exams, like for testing English. And specifically like I work on the part of like generating feedback for learners. And as for a project that I am particularly excited about, so in my case, I will be attending ACL in Vienna, as Maria like shared. In my particular case, this is the first time that I have a paper in the main conference. So for me, that's like a milestone in my own career. The project that I'm going to present in ACL is something that I really like because again, as I mentioned, I have a background in computer science. I like cognitive science, and one of the things that I really enjoy about NLP is like how multidisciplinary it is. And in this work, I was able to include like things like from the educational domain, which is the one that I am currently focused on. So we designed a rubric to test the quality of the text generated by humans and by LLMs. So it has insights from cognitive science, social science, explainable AI. So it was a merge of like different things. It's a multidisciplinary work. So I think like regardless of us proving that the rubric was useful, something that I really like about that work is that it's not entirely like, like computer science like thing. Like it's not just experiments and models. So that's the thing that I like the most. And moving forward, since I am focused again on like feedback generation for learners, um, that's like a parallel project. So right now, like hopefully, I guess like I will probably extend what I'm going to present in ACL because like the case of like learners like focused on English is like very specific, and I mean feedback could be very broad. Particularly, I am really interested in developing something that actually like that helps people improve their writing skills. Like not only like point out like there's a grammar error in here. So communication and discourse level things are like the most complicated ones. But I want to also acknowledge that there are like different learners, right? Like it depends on which one is your native language. Each one has like their own style of like learning. So that's more like in an early stage, but that's another project that I'm like also like very excited about.
That sounds really interesting. So I wish you very luck in this new project. And
Thank you.
congratulations on your accepted paper. I assume you will meet also Maria's student, so that would be great.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, and one of the projects sounds like similar to mine, so I guess like I should definitely
Yeah,
like look for that. Yeah.
they should probably connect.
Amazing. Congratulations. And now, last but not least, of course, we have Victoria. I actually used to work with Victoria in Rappi when I was working there in Colombia. She was in Mexico. So, yeah, I would love to hear about your journey in AI and how have you been working these years when we have been working together.
Thank you, Anna. Hello, everyone. My name is Victoria Maya. I was born in Mexico and in a specific way in Querétaro. I am a data scientist with more than 5 years of experience developing and implementing machine learning models for credit risk, fraud detection, and customer behavior. I was awarded a scholarship from Carolina Foundation to pursue a master degree in data science and big data in Madrid, Spain. And also, I'm currently working toward a master in artificial intelligence. Is the second one in Autonomous University of Querétaro. Um, I currently work on predictive machine learning models focused on customer behavior. In addition, I do outreach and activism to promote the responsible use of AI in a particular way to LLMs and highlight the biases and that they can contain. And my master thesis is about how to use LLMs to create a feature engineering.
Oh,
Uh,
amazing. That sounds great.
yeah, and I'm very happy to be here sharing this space with such extraordinary people like all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. I'm really happy to have you here as well. Um, okay, so now we are going to begin with the main topic of the webinar. So yeah, we are really nowadays, especially, we acknowledge that there are very diverse teams, and some of them actually address bias in the AI system, but they don't perpetuate or highlight the stereotypes or inequalities that there are exist in the training data sets that exist and have been created in the past. So representation truly matters, not just a value but also as a practitioner necessity for building ethical and effective technology. So taking this into account and with that in mind, first I would like to know your perspective about how there are different stages of AI development products. So Maria and Diana, you both work in research, so probably those projects that you're doing eventually will be adapted by industry, for example. There's also applied research of companies that actually are doing research for immediate results for their companies, and also the development of products, as Victoria is working on for companies, for example. So um, what is your perspective in these different stages, and where do you see like the highest challenges or opportunity, talking about diversity and building ethical technology?
I guess I can start. So I think I find that having diverse teams is important, even if you're not thinking about deployment, or so when building a research team or hiring students. I find it really important to make sure we have a wide wide range of perspectives represented, and you see that not only in how they approach a problem, but just in the questions they choose to pursue, right? So, if you have people with different backgrounds in the lab, you'll see how they would be interested maybe in different angles of a particular problem. And that really helps you, just from ideation on, or, which question to pursue, it already sets you up in the right direction. So I think considering this aspect is important pretty much everywhere. Not only AI, right? But in the context of AI, especially how pervasive it is, it's true. I don't know how much to speak about actual deployment or products, but when I was at Microsoft, I was on the research side, but it was one of the places. I mean, I don't know these days, but where they really um, invested in having some kind of like they had a fairness in AI research team, and they worked together with industry as well. And they were really invested in creating groups where different perspectives would be included when they were trying to, evaluate systems or stress systems for potential biases. So I mean, I think it's definitely valuable and important to do. I'll let other folks chime in.
Well, I think like it turned out to be like a good fit, like that the three of us are in here, because I am currently kind of like in the middle of, so even though I'm doing research, something that I didn't mention is that, so I am associated to the University of Cambridge, but my group in particular is funded by the Cambridge University Press and Assessment, which is kind of a small company. So then my research needs to be aligned with their interests. So for example, there are like a couple of products that they develop to help learners of English. And for example, I mean, of course, so I think like the idea is that they have like this team of research on Cambridge side, right? But then again, like we're supposed to kind of like be coaching them. So for me, like this is the first time like working in this way. And what I found a bit challenging, I guess, is like for like in research, like we have the freedom of like pursuing like different like questions, right? And since we don't honestly really think about like how can I include this in a product like that, like, I mean, there are like many interesting things in NLP, like again, like from the linguistic point of view, from the cognitive science point of view. So like that could take, I don't know, a PhD, right? And maybe some people in the industry don't have that much time for you to wait for that. So in my case, what I've seen is that there's a little of so people in industry kind of like struggle to see like why like doing this fundamental research is important. Like in the end, I think like our work is valuable because it's not just like adding a feature to a product, right? So it's not just like saying, I don't know, like let's add a LLM to something, right? Like I think like as researchers, we're trained to think like, do we really need an LLM? Like, what is the task? Let's say in here, like feedback generation. Okay, it might sound like a good fit, but then again, like, is it really the thing that they need to do? So this is like where our like the research expertise, like we can tell them, okay, like not only if an LLM is the right solution, like even which LLM, right? Like more technical stuff that we know. So this is why like it's good to work together with like people who are like focused on using the technology and what we have developed in order to, you know, like help people, right? Like in the short term. But like in the end, I feel like research needs like some time, like it needs time to develop, to mature, right? And that's the thing, like people from industry kind of like struggle, is like they want to include it like I don't know, like I guess like in our head as a researcher, like in a couple of months, and sometimes not even like feasible. And then probably, I don't know, Victoria, who's like more on the development side, like now, like you can provide more like the point of view of someone who is like entirely on the development. Uh, yeah, like from the development point of view.
Yeah, thank you, Diana. I'm totally agree with you. I think in industrial processes, we can see a simplified iterative development cycle that consists from get client requirements, deployment, implementation, and testing. From my experience, when creating AI-based products, the most crucial part is the requirement phase. At this stage, the main task is to translate what the client wants into specific system requirements that we turn into software or AI solution. I believe that this first phase needs a lot of diversity so we can spot exciting biases and create a user experience that represents everyone.
Yeah, I totally agree. I actually have worked in industry, and sometimes if there's no a requirement from the client, that assessment won't be taken into account, even if the team would like to explore that. So there's a need of diversity in both, like the C level, group of people that demands that product, but also in the research, because those are the people who actually create the questions that would like to be solved. So I totally agree with you all. And also because in the testing side, if you don't have like a case study where you want to test your solution for example, I don't know, like eyesight like limitations or stuff like that, the user experience could be wrong. And also, for example, in LLMs, you can have a bias answers, for example, from the system or stuff like that. So I totally agree. um so like taking this into account, are there any examples where your work, having a diverse team, had like different approaches, outcomes, and how you try to brought the impact on your, for example, research project or your solution, working in a specific product?
I guess we can keep the order. I can start. I think, I mean, I have definitely seen that. So I recruited a student when I first started. He's my only Latin American student. He's Mexican. He's also queer, and the questions he brought up are very tight with his identity because these are the things that he's passionate about pursuing. So he came with a lot of experience studying. He's interested in offensive language detection and othering language. And he was specifically interested in studying it for Spanish dialects. Initially, he was interested in Mexican dialect, Mexican Spanish, and has broadened it out from there. And particularly language that was tailored to the queer community. I believe that, recruiting him is the reason that we are even studying that topic in the lab, because it's what he's really passionate about, and he brings them from his own like perspective, right? And similarly, I advised an undergrad, also a Mexican American, and she was also really interested in the robustness of LLM technology to different dialects in Spanish, and not only the dialects across countries, but also within countries, right? So she did this really nice analysis, or trying to identify different countries in the region, and stress test a lot of traditional NLP tasks and LLMs on those dialects, and then she zoomed into Mexico, and then collected also a lot of regional variations, and then also stress test language technology there. And I mean, they bring these questions to me, right? I help them, shape that up so that they can pursue a project and tell them what's viable, what's not viable, and help them develop their plan. But they come up with these ideas, and these ideas are interesting to them because of who they are and what their experiences are. So we have many of those. I have another student who's Indian, and he's really interested in developing cultural analytics technology, particularly in the Indian context. Really interested in cultural stories of the conflict between India and Pakistan, and what they went through in that region. Something I wouldn't have been exposed to unless he was in my lab, right? So I think definitely diversity shapes up the projects that we pursue.
And for example, do you think that in your case there are any missed opportunities, when the LGBTQ community is not taken into account for the AI development? Or, the cultural aspect, of course, is huge, but I think that for the LGBTQ community, sometimes it's hard because for some religions, for example, is not accepted, or there are like some sort of problems regarding how can you share this data. For some countries is complicated. So what's your thoughts about the missed opportunities, talking about gender and, for example, sexual orientation?
Yeah, I'm trying to get if I understand your question, but I guess the question is whether there are challenges when you're trying to pursue directions that specifically intersect with the queer community, as far as like data access or sharing. Am I on the right track, or did I miss the question?
Yeah, that's one of the tracks,
Okay.
but also like if there are any missed opportunities, like for example adding this data into medical fields or the
Oh,
medical data or stuff like that, if there's one opportunity that you're missing because of these challenges that are additional to the gender and sexual orientation information for some
I
communities.
see. I mean, I think there's a lot of open questions in this space, and a lot of interesting directions to pursue. Instead of thinking about missed opportunities, I try to think about it as like open opportunities or questions that you can
Yeah.
approach and answer. You just need, someone that wants to do that work. I think there are definitely, challenges, I guess, could come into play. I mean, we have been lucky to not really have been constrained in the type of questions that we pursue, right? You definitely have to be careful, when you're threatened with this type of sensitive data, right? So if you're collecting, for example, for Juan's project, if you're collecting data about othering language that is specific to the queer community, this can be sensitive, right? It can be sensitive both from a data collection or retention or even an annotation process, right? So it's like, okay, we want to involve LGBTQ people when we're annotating these data to identify this language, but it's also not great, right, to be a queer person and having to sit looking at a bunch of offensive language for hours that might be, detrimental to your mental health. So these are definitely challenges that we have to navigate, and there are like protocols in place to do that. So I guess that, yeah, no, that's one actual challenge that you encounter when you want to both include the community in your work, but also respect the community as you're doing it. So yeah, I guess that what I can share from my experience. I don't know if other folks have thoughts on this.
Well, in my case, since again, like because of the nature of my research topic has never been like particularly focused on like I guess like gender or diversity itself. So, but what one experience that comes to mind, so as I mentioned, I did my graduate students in Japan. And for example, one like in the end, for example, something that I bring to the table as a Spanish speaker, so Spanish is a gender language, right? And for example, Japanese is not. And something that I realized, like in the end, we all kind of have some bias and as in beliefs that we have, right? And like even preferences. And for example, many students in my lab in Japan, like they were of course like focused on doing like researching, like pursuing questions like regarding Japanese language. But then when they come and present in these like international venues, and first of all, they need to present in English, and they are exposed to, you know, like have a more diverse set of people, like all kind of people. I think I don't remember, it was, I don't know in which ACL, but not very recent that so they like started like talking about, you know, like asking the question of what are your pronouns? So your name tag has that. And for example, many people in my lab didn't even have like any idea of what that meant or why that was that important. For example, I needed to explain like, well, why is this important and little things. I feel like my what I'm trying to get at is like so diversity comes in different ways. And for example, I mean, also, I mean, you can include it in your research. I guess in my case was like more like backwards from the point of view, like I needed to teach somehow, like how, like even like how to consider like more a broad community, like how language is important, even when we write papers, for example. I guess the default, even in English, is to refer to users like he or him or right, and then like now like you can use they or them, right, like, instead of like, or some people I think advocate for even using like female pronouns, right? But if you really want to be neutral when you write your papers and you're like talking about something, you like the correct or the recommendation is to use they or them, right? Things like that, or like I don't know, like sometimes we need to annotate data depending on the task. I mean, there are like very specific tasks, like I don't know, hate speech that probably like have like a more direct impact on specific communities, like the our community, the LGBT community. But I think I don't know, like if you're talking about like language learning, right? Like for example, if you have annotators from a different background, it's also it brings something to the table. So I think like maybe for us, since we do belong to these communities, we're used to like think about it. And for example, Maria has shared like this how like their students bring it in, even how the questions that they generate. When you just don't belong to the community or you're not even exposed to it, again, it's like it just doesn't exist. And another type of contribution is like this is why like representation matters. I guess like I want to believe that one of my contributions to that lab, even if it was not in terms of papers, was like bringing some diversity to them and helping at least like consider like, okay, maybe I need to expand my view of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very much it.
Yeah, I agree. And for example, Victoria, in your time working with credit risk, did your perspective kind of like added some value to how you evaluate the system, or how do you add data about the customers that are applying for a loan? For example, some system could be sexist, or they don't take into account this background. Do you think this also presented an opportunity, or have a more inclusive solution in your teams?
Yeah, Anna, over the years that as I met and worked with many different people, I noticed that our life experience often make us more aware of injustice. So when diverse people view technology, we can spot bias and create products that are increasingly fair. Our stories mirror and bring great value when we develop or apply artificial intelligence models. Um, in addition to the risk linked to spotting bias in models, low representation or a very homogeneous team leads to leads to creative process limited by life experience that are too similar.
Yeah, that's totally right. For example, some people doesn't take that into account when adding the data, to the credit risk model, for example, or for the recommendation system. Could be, you could have some biases. But yeah, exactly. I think that usually happens. Um, okay, and now going back for NLP and for research, do you guys think it's easier or is harder to like tackle these issues like from research, or is it like better to because I think that the question could be asked, but when you implement them that could be harder. So what do you think about like being like aware of these type of biases during the research stage versus the implementation stage, or product development? Maybe Maria or Diana.
I think the community has really, I mean, like when the community, I mean the NLP community, is particularly open, I think, to some of these questions. I mean, there's a lot of interest in fairness in NLP systems, bias in NLP systems, language technology, and I mean the ACL community in particular. I mean, we've had a few editions of the Queer in NLP workshop at this point that receive particular work at the intersection of NLP and queer issues, and we see all kinds of work here, right? So from measuring bias, right, from a language modeling perspective or from a particular task perspective. We see work on, computational social science applications. We've seen work on computational social linguistics too. So there's a lot of different questions that folks are asking, I think, from a research perspective. Of course, I mean, it's not the majority of the things still you see in the conference, right? There's obviously some big trends that people are following that have nothing to do with this. But there are people out there that are interested in this, and it's an area that's growing, actually. I think in the last conference, they were showing the areas that grew the most, and I think transparency, explainability, fairness is one of the areas that has been growing the most. So people, I think, from the research perspective, are thinking about this. I mean, I think that's the first place you should think about it before you move it to products, because you need to know whether whether it exists, how it exists before you even attempt to mitigate it, so that your mitigation strategy is well informed, and you're actually trying to solve the problem and maybe questioning if you're adding other problems. I mean, it's not an easy task, right? Particularly with this really obscure models that we use that we have really no control over. So I guess, I mean, I don't have a great answer, but I think there are people that are interested. There are places where they're being encouraged to ask these questions. And we would hope that some of this makes its way into products, but I don't know if we have any control over that.
Yeah, I also think that now with like this global massification of access to the AI solutions, for example, for me in particular, but I don't know for you, the launch of ChatGPT actually is like a tipping point where everyone's having access to interact with AI systems, knowing that is an AI system, for example. So I think that this massification allows the systems to have more feedback from the users, and that many people that are not only developing the solutions in the labs can interact and highlight these spectrums of solutions or biases or explainability. Also for example, medical issues, like doctors need them to be explainable and take this into account. But perhaps, Diana, since you work in the middle, you could tell us your perspective as well.
I mean, I agree with Maria that like on the bright side, there's been like some like positive engagement from the NLP community, like considering this like more diverse type of research. At the same time, I think like again pointing out like to, for example, I think like the case of Maria is like a very good example, because like in the end, if you see like the work that is being done in her lab is led by people that either like themselves identify either as queer or like as another minority. I mean, in the end, just Latin Americans, we are a minority in AI. So it's led by them, right? Again, like hardly someone that doesn't belong to the community is going to ask those questions and include them in their research or in their development. So this is why representation is very important, right? So the thing is that I think it's good that it is happening. So there's research about that. But also, again, I feel like I mean, in research, in the end, I guess, like as researchers, we are measured by the number of papers that we produce, right? And then, I mean, of course, there's always like topics that do have like are more trendy, right? And I guess like a research project that if you just mention, I guess like something related to gender or something specific to the LGBT community. The thing is that for the main conference to accept the work, you kind of need to prove that it has an impact on the broad community, in the broad NLP community. And then the main question will be like, okay, this sounds interesting and relevant, but if I am working on, I don't know, in the medical domain, how is this relevant to my work, right? I mean, it could be, but the thing is that people are not trained to like have that broad view. So then usually those works don't make it to the main conference, or it's harder for those works to make it to the main conference. It is good, as Maria mentioned now, this is why there are like specific workshops, and then you can show them there. But then again, okay, so there's one step of like making like creating research and making that research visible. But then if you ask how many people from the other side of the NLP community are looking at this, I guess I'm not sure. I mean, maybe I'm being too pessimistic. I don't know if they're actually looking at them. I think like right now, specifically with LLMs now, also there's something new from my point of view. I mean, multilingualism is not new. So it means like not focusing only in English, like consider different languages. But like a more recent topic is multiculturalism. So cultures, right? So for example, the case of Spanish, like Spanish is spoken in different countries, and even though from the linguistic point of view, there might be like some, I mean, there are like enough differences to consider Mexican Spanish a dialect and Venezuelan Spanish a dialect, right? But in the end, language is tied to culture. And now, for example, of course, LLMs are not very great at culture. So then there's now, I think there's more like a research line, more specifically of like knowledge of the culture of a country. And then, of course, this is related to language. So then I do see more people involved in that. And I think that's one good thing about LLMs. But then again, I do see these efforts being led by people from those communities. Again, like the Latin American community, the queer community, the community from Africa, for example, like or work that has been done in Arabic is led by them somehow. So that's my only, I guess, complaint. I wish that more people were involved. And I guess later we're going to talk about allies, for example. Yeah.
Yes. And I totally agree with you that most of the solutions are done in English, for example, because of the universal language, concept. But do you think there are opportunities about being like this arising development or research like in other languages, for example, in Spanish, Portuguese, or Arabic, for example?
Um, and again, probably then like Maria can like back me up on this. The thing is that, for example, again, like since English is perceived as the standard language, for example, in many major conferences, your work has to be submitted in English, for example. Um, and that's already like a barrier, right? I mean, there's great work being done by researchers that for some reason they don't have like a good academic English, right? So then present they need to submit for different reasons like their work to other venues where they can accept their work in Spanish or in Portuguese, right? So there's already like a closed like door in there, right, for the community, right? But I mean, then we will need to talk about like how conferences are being organized. But then like this, like, so how like again, like taking into account like the diversity of like the people submitting their works, like what are their first languages, or even traveling to a conference again, like depending on where you come from, depending on the passport that you have. For example, for Latin Americans, it's not very easy to travel to the US, right? So then little things like that, which I think in the past few years, like people are like the main organizers of the conference are like making some changes, but then again, I want to highlight that this comes from us pushing, and I include myself and even Maria because like we've been on that side, like trying to advocate for like, hey, like a researcher from Mexico, like can doesn't like to begin with cannot afford to pay the registration fee like someone from the US, something like that, right? So there are like many things to consider. So there's definitely like room for improvement.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think work that is about other languages, it's really well received at this point, right? And a lot of conferences have tried actually to make a point on expanding this, but that doesn't limit other types of barriers of the people that are actually doing that work in those other languages that might be in places where it's harder, to get visibility, to publish for many different reasons, be it how do you even get to a conference? Do you have the support that you need? Do you have the financial support that you need? And all of this type of things. And I mean, it's an uphill battle. I mean, we try, but there's only so much we can do. But the results are there. I mean, we held the first NLP conference in Latin America just last year. And the number of Latin American participants was huge compared to any other edition of the conference. And you could see it just by having it in Mexico.
Just
A
that
lot
we
of
also added like
levels.
changed the name of the conference, which again
Correct. Yeah.
like so just for context and again I mean not like I mean we're supposed to be talking probably more focused on the LGBT community, but I think it starts with different like diversity things. So for example,
Yeah.
the name of the conference is NACL, which is NAAACL. So it was supposed to be North American chapter of the Association for Computational Linguistics. The thing is that the N only means North America, and then again, even though that should include Mexico at least, the truth is that like conferences were like never held in Mexico. We were actually not acknowledged, and of course, like so the chapters are supposed to be focused at the continent level, and then you were already like the name was already discarding whole Latin America. So one recent positive change is like the Latin American community pushed to change the name of the conference. So now it's the same. It's just that an N now it stands for Nations of the America instead of North America. And it might there was a survey, and I did have access to the people like some of the like replies. It was a bit honestly like discouraging to see like some people like I guess it's ignorance, but for them they were like, why do you even want to change the name? Why is this important? And then like very few people, like even not from Latin American background, saying like, yeah, sure, like if you guys don't feel included, then we definitely need to like change the name if this is what you need. Like it was like a good example of like the community asking for what we needed, and they listened to us, and now we have it. So there are like many things going on. So and in the case of like again like in particular like the queer community, the workshop like the opportunity of having a specific workshop of topics related to the queer community is also new. It happened this year, right?
Yeah, so the we had an unofficial workshop for a while, but this year, it was the first time we had official proceedings for the workshop. So that was already a big change. So people can actually publish those papers and they can count. So, I mean, it's also a push in the direction of actually there's people looking at topics at the intersection of queer and NLP, queerness and NLP, queerness and linguistics, and we want to give them more visibility. So, yeah, so there have been, I guess, well, I mean, all community driven, as Diana says, but a lot of changes, at least in the NLP community. Would hope to see something similar in the broader AI community.
Yeah, and I guess like just to open a space for Victoria to jump in, I guess like in the end, like I mean, in research we have like different questions and there are like different things that we explore. But I will assume that in the end, in development, they at least like they probably will take a look at what we are doing in research to take some inspiration to put them in their products. So then again, this is why like our work is important. Like it is important to keep pushing for people and motivating students or researchers to target like NLP questions are directly related to gender or the LGBTQ community, right? Because like then someone else is probably going to see that paper and turn it into a product, even if we are not. I think it's not that we're not interested; we just don't have the time. So then we do the research part, and then we're opening the door for somebody else to actually implement it.
Yeah, I also agree that what you said earlier, Diana, that there are many like subgroups, and for example, we are Latin Americans, which is a smaller group, and then the queer community in Latin America. There are many intersections that those intersections together actually create a broader space for people to discuss about these languages and to bring this point into consideration. So perhaps like moving toward these allieships, or partnerships that we can do, particularly for those outside the LGBTQ community or the outside of the Latin American community, or other types of community. How do you feel that these AI partnerships should be, or how meaningful allyships could exist? And maybe Victoria, since you work in spreading the work on creating awareness, maybe you can like also let us know how these partnerships could look like for those outside the community.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Well, I believe that one of the main pillars is respect. Many workplaces today are still hostile. Awareness talks on fundamental topics such as gender expression are always appreciated. Simple "what are your pronouns" always help. I have a lot of friends or coworkers that even they can use the bathroom because they have um, they simply can because other people doesn't understand that they are women or men, trans men. So I definitely believe that respect is the main pillar. So we are not asking for a special treatment, just respect.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that the respect is the basic stuff, and then we can support other, as Diana was mentioning. Listen your perspective, for example, for changing the name, or things that look basic, but in the end they take into account your opinion. So, do you think there are other steps that allies can take to support representation and inclusion, even from gender or um, sexual orientation, for example, talking about the LGBTQ community or Latin American community, and so on?
I think Alice make a big difference, right? So amplifying the message, supporting the message, helping give visibility, I guess, in the space of AI to queer researchers doing this work. I think those are always all ways in which allyship can be important. Talking about partnerships, that's something. I mean, it's amazing when it happens. It's hard to do. I've been involved with both Queer and AI, Latinx and AI, and we've been lucky sometimes. I think once we pull off a joint affinity group poster session at one of the conferences, and everyone got exposed to each other's works, and their efforts in those along those lines sometimes that get pulled off. But of course, I mean, as we say, usually it's from the community, so that means there's people in our communities that are extra burdened with service too, because you're doing the same work other people do, but then also put in a lot of service work to make these things happen. So I'd say that's somewhere where allies could jump in, right? So I mean, how can they help organizers of this initiatives? How can they collaborate or support the organization in ways that might lessen that burden on the community? But I mean, it's a fine line to work too, right? Because then you also want to make sure the community drives the effort forward in some cases. So I understand that it's not always super easy to do, but yeah, I think amplifying the message, helping with visibility, collaborating in initiatives, supporting initiatives, these are always in which allyship can really work. And just like, respecting are also speaking up, right? I think sometimes the social cost is less for someone that is not particularly in a marginalized community. And when they speak up, other people listen, maybe even more. So, yeah, I mean, that's a lot of power to have.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that I think in summary, I mean, I do agree with Victoria that like we need respect. And but I think like something very important again, like I think it's very human to have fear or reject the unknown, right? So I think on one hand it makes sense that unless you belong to a particular community, you're not actively thinking about the things that like matter to them, right? So I will say that what is very important for allies, first of all, is just to be open to listen. And like, for example, I think like there are like different things that need to happen. We need these spaces, right? So we're in here, we are open to have this conversation and share our knowledge, our experiences, but it will go nowhere if we don't have like anyone listening, right? Or if there's no ally. And for example, I mean, like, it's a nice example of a personal example. Like, for example, right now, two of my sisters are online, and I mean, my sisters are not part of the queer community yet. They are in here, and I think for me, it's very valuable that they're in here, not only to support me because um, what I've learned from them is that they're like open to understand how what I go through as a bisexual person, for example. But then, I mean, I can talk about things about like from trans people or stuff, but in the end, um, it would be more helpful if they're open to like if they have like a trans like if they hear directly from trans people, right? In the end, like even I think regardless like whether you're working on development or research, we are always aimed to solve a question or like solve an issue, right? So we need to understand the needs. We cannot just it's not ideal to come and tell the user like, oh, this is what you need. You're supposed to be hearing from the user what is what they need, and then we either like focus on research and we focus on development. So again, and my sisters are not even related to AI. But what I want to highlight from their cases that they're like open to listen. So one of them is a doctor, the other one is a lawyer, and very important fields and like very basic stuff like me talking about pronouns, identity, gender, right? And it's me having the patience to share. Is them being open to listen, and this is what helps. Like I mean, I'm hoping and I trust that then they share and they spread the word, right? So then this is how it starts like mattering for more people. Not even if you are not in there. I feel like something that allies probably like genuinely don't know. Like I think there are many people that want to support, they just don't know how. And then again, just being open to listen, it makes like a world of difference.
Yeah, I also agree that this generates a snowball effect eventually because people spread the word and also they are more open to listen about other stuff. For example, I have friends that are in Women in ML. That's a huge community already, but now they are more open to highlight that there are not representative from women in Latin America. That's another minority, even smaller. So I think that they being aware of this stuff, hearing it from someone who suffers that, or that lives with it actively, it's really important. So I'm really glad that your sisters are here, and congratulations for this big support.
Sorry to interrupt. And before like somebody jumps in, like and a good example actually that came from the Queer and AI workshop. And then even if I am part from for the community, and there are issues that even myself I don't know everything that the community goes through. And I clearly remember someone whose research was about targeting the issue of like it's very hard for some people to be open in social media, right? So what happens is that they have two profiles. Like they have like their profile that they use with their family and friends. So they are like, like okay with it. And the other profile where they can be themselves and they can be open. So then this is a particular case of social media that doesn't happen with any other type of users. For example, like that particular issue of like having two identities is very specific to the queer community, for example. And I think I wouldn't have thought about it in any other way. And I mean, I guess saying that maybe not only in social media, I mean, it's like there are other situations where people from the community need a specific development, right? Like whoever is developing a product, they do need to think about that specific case.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Okay, so we are running out of time, but this was a really interesting conversation. I personally don't work in NLP, so it's really inspiring to see all your work that you're doing, and also to see Victoria keep the moving in her work and the workspace once we used to work together. So I wanted to ask you if there are any final thoughts that you would like to say, maybe to future tech minorities that will exist for a while, but that we're trying to close the gap. So if there are any reflections you would like to share with them, or even to the allies that are really important for this, for closing these gaps.
I guess to like an up and coming researcher, I would recommend to reach out to this group. So I would get involved, with groups like LXAI, Korean AI. I mean, they're there to help people connect, to more senior folks, help give visibility to their work. A lot of times, I mean, I've recruited from the schools as well, so, for PhD programs. So there are spaces in which, maybe you don't know anybody, but you identify one of these communities is a good place to connect, and hear about a ton of different types of work and people that might have identities in common with you, make you feel welcome and connect you to others. So I would say, yes, get involved, meet people, take advantage of the resources that are out there, and reach out to us as well. I mean, at least, I might miss some email here and there, but I mean, I try to reply to folks, especially from Latin America or the queer community, if they reach out with any specific questions, and point them in the right place. So I would say, yeah, use people in the community for your benefit.
I think what I will add to that is, again, like it's also very important, like the environment where we are working. And you talked about like this, like a snowball effect. So I will say, like, regardless of you working on AI or whatever you do, like I think, and going back to what Victoria mentioned, like I think the respect is the foundation of everything, and like just acknowledging that we are different. They're like they're different people, right? Like there are people from a different culture. There are people with, I mean, again, the sexual diversity is not the only type of diversity, right? So just like being open, like to like, I guess, like to observe a bit more. And if you see someone, I don't know, like a bit different from you, like I think it's nice to listen from their experiences, like trying to get like close to them. And it again is, I think it's very valued to just acknowledge, like, I don't know what you're going through, but I want to understand. So therefore, I need to listen from you, right? So then I think like from what allies can do is that it might not seem like much, but it's definitely very important, like advocating for a diverse environment. And then again, that's something that they can definitely start doing, like by talking to people. And then again, that's, if you do that, then probably the person next to you is also going to do it. And then it should be normalized, but it's not. So then eventually it's just going to be like the normal thing, like asking for your pronouns so the other person feels acknowledged and respected, like with their like gender identity, like things like that.
I
Yeah, I would
agree.
like, sorry.
No, Victoria, please go ahead.
Thank you, Anna. So I would like to add that our diverse life experiences are extremely valuable. So more than we often realize. So let's be kind and respectful to others. A simple question such as "What are your pronouns?" can make someone's day. I would like to say that I'm very grateful to these spaces because is hard, it's difficult, and especially for trans people in Latin America, um, to get to see spaces like this that see people of the diversity in a very different context is very valuable. So many thanks to the organizing team, and thank you for everything, and thank you also to being part of the change because like a trans Latino America person is is very complicated in some cases.
Well, no, thank you for participating. This was a really amazing space. I think that we all learned something from NLP also, but from the importance of diversity. So thank you so much for joining us. And we will be hosting from Latinx in AI other events, other opportunities for you to engage, and other spaces. So I invite you to stay tuned. But thank you, Maria. Thank you, Diana. And thank you, Victoria, for taking the space and for sharing us those valuable messages. So I hope to see you soon in another event.